Hi, I'm Mark Donegan with the Marketing Execution Podcast. Founders don't have the luxury of waiting for creativity to strike, but most content systems still depend on it. The truth is, one well-placed what-if question can unlock a complete story almost instantly. It shifts you from pressure to possibility. I've used this method for years to turn simple ideas into content that actually ships. Today, we're unpacking how founders and teams can use it to produce faster without sacrificing quality.
Tune in, listen up, it's marketing time. Bright ideas sparking, blowing your mind. From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Mark, I've been thinking about something that sounds almost too simple to be useful. You know how we're always telling founders to craft these elaborate brand stories and messaging frameworks? Well, I came across this technique that basically says you can tell a compelling story in just 5 sentences. And I'm sitting here wondering if we've been overcomplicating things this whole time.
Oh, you're touching on one of my favorite topics right now because, we absolutely overcomplicate storytelling and marketing. Like founders spend weeks agonizing over their narrative, hiring consultants, building these massive brand books that nobody reads. And meanwhile, the most effective stories, they're shockingly simple.
Okay, so walk me through this. How does a 5-sentence story actually work in practice?
Here's the structure. Sentence 1, you set the scene. This is the time, person, place. Sentence 2, you introduce a conflict or problem. In sentence 3, you describe what they tried to do about it. Then sentence 4, you share what happened. Finally, sentence 5, you land the lesson.
Wait, that's literally the hero's journey compressed into like 30 seconds of reading time.
Exactly. You know what? Your customers don't want to read a novel about your product. They want to know in seconds whether you understand their problem and can help. A 5-sentence story does that. I once heard of a founder who was struggling to explain their SaaS product. They had this beautiful website with paragraphs of copy, feature lists, and testimonials everywhere. Nobody was converting.
Let me guess, too much information?
Way too much. So they stripped it down. They told a simple story about a specific customer. Last Tuesday, Sarah, a marketing manager at a mid-sized company, realized she was spending 4 hours every day on manual reporting. She tried our tool. Within a week, she got those 4 hours back. If you're drowning in spreadsheets, maybe it's time to try something different.
That's compelling. You can actually see yourself in that story.
And that's the magic. But the real power isn't just in the structure. It's in what comes before you write the story. There's this technique called the what-if question method that completely changes how you approach storytelling.
Yeah, I remember we talked about it in our previous episode.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to it yet, just browse our list on a Marketing Execution Podcast. So before you write anything, you take your product or your customer situation and you ask creative what-if questions to unlock story angles you'd never think of otherwise. There are 6 categories. You can flip the truth, change a purpose, add a new ability, alter the size, shift the time, or mix with fiction.
Hold on. Can you break those down? Because I'm not sure how flipping the truth helps me sell software.
Fair point. Okay, so let's say you're selling a collaboration tool. Flipping the truth might be asking, what if teams worked better when they were completely isolated? That sounds counterintuitive, right? But it forces you to articulate why collaboration matters. Your story becomes about proving the opposite of that what if.
Oh, that's clever. You're basically stress testing your value proposition through the story.
Yes, and storytelling is positioning. When you ask, what if my customer had an unlimited budget? How would they solve this problem differently? That's the change in a purpose category. And suddenly, you're not just telling a story about your product, you're telling a story about transformation.
I want to dig into the execution side of this though, because I can see a founder listening to this and thinking, okay, great, I'll write a 5 sentence story, but where do they actually use it?
Everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Your homepage hero section, your code outreach emails, your investor pitch, your product hunt launch, your LinkedIn post. The 5 sentence structure works because it respects people's attention while still delivering emotional impact. I saw a recent report that said the average person's attention span for marketing content is now under 8 seconds. You cannot waste a single word.
So it's not just a creative exercise, it's actually a constraint that forces clarity.
That's the insight most people miss. Constraints breed creativity. When you only have 5 sentences, you have to get to the heart of why anyone should care.
You know what strikes me about this? It's almost like the what if questions are your brainstorming phase, and the 5 sentence structure is your editing phase. You're generating possibilities and then ruthlessly compressing them.
That is a perfect way to frame it. If founders try to skip the what if phase, they jump straight to writing because they think they already know their story. But the what if questions unlock angles that feel fresh. They help you see your product through your customer's eyes instead of your own.
What about the mix with fiction category? That one seems weird for B2B marketing.
It sounds weird, but it's actually powerful. What if your customers organize their workflows like characters in a heist movie? What if your product was the secret weapon in a fantasy quest? You're not literally writing fiction. You're borrowing emotional frameworks that people already understand and connect with.
So you're essentially hijacking existing story structures that are already wired into people's brains.
Exactly right. Stories are how humans make sense of the world. When you tap into familiar narrative patterns, you're flowing with how people naturally process information.
Mark, that's fascinating. Let's pivot for a second and talk about how a founder with literally zero marketing budget can start implementing this tomorrow without hiring a copywriter or buying any tools.
You know what I love about that question? It cuts right to the heart of why this technique matters so much. Because the best storytelling tools are free. They live in your head. They cost you nothing but 20 minutes of focused thinking.
But there's got to be a catch, right? Like, simple doesn't always mean easy.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And that's the first thing founders need to understand about why this matters. The 5 sentence story is a thinking tool. When you force yourself to compress your story into 5 sentences, you're actually doing the hard work of figuring out what you really believe about your customer's problem.
Say more about that, because I feel like there's something deeper here.
Okay, so think about it this way. Most founders can talk for an hour about their product, features, roadmap, technical architecture, all of it. But ask them to explain in 30 seconds why someone should care, they freeze up. The 5 sentence story forces you to answer that question, and that is where the real value lives.
It's almost like the story becomes a mirror for your own clarity.
That's it. The 5 sentence story is a diagnostic tool. If you can't write it, you probably don't understand your market as well as you think you do.
Okay, but let's talk about the emotional side of this. Because founders are logical people. They want data and metrics. Why should they care about storytelling at all?
Look, humans are not rational decision makers. We like to think we are. We built spreadsheets and comparison charts, but at the end of the day, we buy based on emotion and justify with logic. Stories are how you reach the emotional brain.
So when you tell that 5 sentence story about Sarah getting her 4 hours back, you're not just conveying information.
You're creating a feeling. The listener imagines themselves as Sarah. They feel the frustration of wasted time. They feel the relief of getting it back. That emotional connection is worth more than any feature list you could ever write.
I want to push back a little here, though, because some founders might hear this and think, okay, storytelling is just manipulation. It's tricking people into buying.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's the opposite. A good story is actually more honest than traditional marketing copy. When you tell a specific story about a real outcome, you're being transparent. You're saying, here's exactly what happened for this person. Compare that to vague claims like we boost productivity or we save you time. Which one is more honest?
The story gives people enough information to decide if it applies to them.
Right. And here's the other thing. Bad products can't hide behind good stories for long. If your story promises transformation and your product doesn't deliver, people find out fast. Stories actually raise the stakes for you to be excellent.
There's something else I'm thinking about here. The what if questions we talked about earlier. They seem like they're not just for brainstorming, they're for finding the truth about your product.
Yes, when you ask, what if my customer had unlimited resources? You're really asking, what makes my solution uniquely valuable? When you ask, what if the opposite of my premise was true? You're stress testing your positioning. These aren't creative exercises, they're strategic tools disguised as creativity.
So, a founder who takes this seriously isn't just writing better marketing copy, they're actually building a stronger business.
That's the insight that changes everything. Storytelling is a way of understanding your customer so deeply that your entire product gets better. The story informs the roadmap. The story shapes customer success. The story becomes your competitive advantage.
All right, Mark, I'm sold on why this matters, but I know our listeners are itching to get tactical. Let's shift gears and talk about the exact steps someone can take this week to put this into practice.
Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to break this into 3 steps. Anyone can do these this week. No fancy tools, just you, a blank doc, and maybe 30 minutes. I like it already. Keep going. Step 1. Pick one customer outcome you want to talk about. It has to be specific, not we help companies grow. Or like, we helped Acme Corp cut their onboarding time from 2 weeks to 3 days.
So you're saying start with the result, not the product.
Exactly. The result is your anchor. Everything else flows from there. Notion did this brilliantly early on. They told stories about specific teams that stopped using 5 different apps because Notion replaced them all.
Okay, I've got my outcome. What's next?
Step 2. Write your 5 sentences using this exact structure. Sentence 1 sets the scene. Time, person, place. Sentence 2 introduces the conflict. What was broken? Sentence 3 describes what they tried to fix it. Sentence 4 shares what happened. And sentence 5 delivers the lesson for your audience.
Can you walk us through a real example?
Sure. Let's say you sell a SaaS tool for customer support. Here's how it might sound. Last quarter, a support manager named David was drowning in tickets at his fintech startup. His team was missing response deadlines and customers were churning. He tried hiring more reps, but the budget wasn't there. Then he implemented our AI triage system and cut response times by 60% in 2 weeks. If your support team is overwhelmed, automation might be the answer.
5 sentences, maybe 40 words, but I can see David's problem.
Right? And notice what's not in there. No feature lists, no technical specs, just a human with a problem who found the solution. That's the power of this framework.
That's awesome. Okay, for the last one was step 3.
Step 3 is where most people skip. You gotta stress test your story with what-if questions. Ask yourself things like, what if the opposite of my premise was true? What if my customer had unlimited budget? What if this problem didn't exist in 5 years?
Oh, I see where you're going with these. These questions expose weak spots.
They do. Calendly is a great example here. They could have said, what if scheduling actually wasn't that painful? And you know what? For some people, it isn't, but they found their audience. Salespeople, recruiters, consultants, people who schedule dozens of meetings a week. The what if question helped them get specific about who actually needs them.
So the questions serve as filters to find your real customer.
Bingo. And here's a practical tip. Write down 6 what-if questions using these categories. Flip the truth, change a purpose, add a new ability, alter the scale, shift the timeline, mix with fiction. Even if they seem silly, they unlock angles you'd never find otherwise.
I love that mix with fiction one. Sounds weird, but I bet it works. So to recap, step 1, pick one specific outcome. Step 2, write 5 sentences following the structure. Step 3, stress test with what-if questions.
And here's the thing. You can do all 3 steps in one sitting. Grab coffee, open a doc. 30 minutes later, you've got a story you can use in emails, on your website, in sales calls. It's the highest ROI marketing work you can do.
All right, Mark, we've covered a ton of ground today. Can you pull it all together and give our listeners the big picture summary of everything we discussed?
We started by talking about how founders overcomplicate storytelling when the most effective approach is actually the simplest. The 5-sentence structure gives you a framework that respects your audience's attention while delivering real emotional impact. You set the scene, introduce the conflict, describe the attempt, share the outcome, and land the lesson. That's your entire story in 30 seconds of reading time. Then we talked about why this matters beyond just writing better copy. The 5-sentence story is actually a diagnostic tool that reveals whether you truly understand your customer's problem. If you can't write it, you probably don't know your market as well as you think. And finally, we got tactical with 3 concrete steps. Pick one specific customer outcome, write your 5 sentences using this structure, and stress test everything with what-if questions to find angles you'd never discover otherwise.
Mark, after everything we've covered today, what's the one thing you really hope people remember when they close this episode?
You know what? Your customer doesn't want to hear your story. They want to hear their story told back to them. The moment you stop talking about your product and start showing people a mirror of their own struggle, that's when everything changes. The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the marketing execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.